Now that we have a way to know when someone clicks on a character, we now need to get the rest of the character data. What we're going to do is when we click on a character, we're going to have it shoot off another action in addition to this one. To do that, all we have to do is add another dispatch down here. And we're going to call it get character profile. And we're going to, again, pass in that ID that's we get from up here. Now we have yet to actually create this, but we're kind of working backwards. So we need to make sure that we import it. It's going to be in that same file as the set current character. So we need to make sure we import it. Now that we have imported it and everything should be set up here in character list, it'll get kicked off correctly. We need to make sure we actually add that action. So over here in source reducer character action, we need to make sure that we add the action to this. So first things first, we need to make sure that we're bringing in the API URL that we used earlier, since we know that we're going to be hitting the API. Now we need to actually create our action creator, and we remember, correct, that we called it get character profile. It takes in an ID. Now since we're going to be doing some asynchronous work, we know that we need to return a function from here, and this function takes in dispatch. This is going to be very similar to what we did when we got all of the characters for our application. We're going to use fetch, and we're going to use template tags to keep this clean looking, and we're going to have to hit people, and then we're going to hit people ID. Once we get that response, we want to do the same thing we did before, where we parse it as JSON, and that will give us the profile. Now once we have this profile, we need to make sure we're dispatching another action, and this action is going to use another action creator that we will create, and it's just going to be set character profile, and we're going to pass in the profile. So we've used an action creator here, but we haven't actually created that action creator. So let's make it. First things first though, we need to create a new constant that we can use in our new reducer as the action it will be listening for. And it's going to be called set character profile. Okay, and then we need to create an action creator called set character profile, and it's going to take in a profile, and all it simply does is returns an action object. The type is going to be set character profile, and we're also going to pass the profile. Now that we have this action that will set the character profile, we need to actually create a reducer that will listen for it. So to do this, first thing we're going to do is open up our index.js inside of character. We're going to import a new reducer called profile, and then we're going to add that to the reducer that is exported. Now we need to actually create that reducer. We'll start off with our generic reducer. We know it's going to need an initial state. In this case, it's profile, so we know it's going to be an object. And then we just need to export default, some function that takes in state, and its default is initial state, and an action. We are going to switch on the action type, and our default case is going to be to return the state. We know in this one we'll be listening for the profile being set, so we know we need to import that constant. So that constant was called set character profile, and that is from our actions file. And now whenever we hear that, we'll add a case statement. We want to make sure that we're pulling out and returning the profile out of that action. And make sure we put the arrow there. So whenever this action is kicked off, it should be getting the data and putting it in our Redux store, but we need to actually display it. So let's go back to our app.js, our main app component. We want to import a new component called character profile, and then we want to make sure we are displaying that character profile. Now that we have it displaying, we need to actually make sure that we create it. Okay, so we create character profile.js inside our components directory, and we're going to do what we normally do. We need to import React, and we also need to import the connect function from React Redux. We also need to create our component, and we're going to call it character profile. And then we know that this is going to be a connected component, So we need to export default, and remember we have to call connect twice. It's very important. And this is our basic setup for all our components. Now let's create our map state to props function. We know it takes in the state, and we know that we want to pull some stuff out of state. We want to pull out that character's profile. So we're going to go into character, which is an object, and then we're going to pull out the profile. This is more object destructuring, just a little bit more complex, but to me it lets us keep things a lot cleaner. Per usual, we're also going to return just an object, and we just want to put the profile in there and return it. Now, because we're using map state to props, we need to make sure that we pass it to the connect the first time we call connect. And because we have profile here, we know that profile is therefore going to be available through props, which are passed in here, so we can destructure that and pull the profile directly out. Now I'm just going to paste in what our component is going to look like. Here we have a div that has a character profile ID, and again has that bootstrap styling. We've got an H1 just showing that this is the profile section. And then we're doing this profile name and then what it's going to be displayed as. Now the reason we do this profile name, it's sort of a shortcut. Instead of writing if profile.name, then I'll put this, if this, then this. With the way JavaScript works, if this is false, then it will never actually run this code. So essentially this is a gate to say if it exists, then show it, otherwise don't show it. So now that that's all set up, we should have everything set up pretty solidly. So let's restart the server. It'll pop our application up for us. And we can bring this up. We can see all our actions coming through. So let's click on one and see what happens. See, it sets the current character. Took a little bit to go get that data, but then once it got the data, it ran set character profile. And here's the diff. Here's the change that was made in state. If we want to look at state, we can go into character and then profile. And then here's all the data on that person. If I click on Darth Vader, for example, all that data changes again, and it updates our view perfectly. This is working great. Now, in the next one, we're going to do something very similar, but this time around, we're going to grab the data about the character's world that they come from.